Hey guys, it's Bryony. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be answering some of the most popular questions I have got since I started revealing my solo motherhood journey on YouTube. So ever since I announced that I was pregnant and started sharing my journey to solo motherhood, I have been getting so many questions, and I decided it would probably be a good idea to do a specific video answering some of those questions for you guys. And while some of these questions that I've been asked I probably will do specific videos on in the future, I thought it would be good to kind of do a sit down and just answer some of them today for you, just so you can kind of know what's going on. And some of these questions are specific to my journey with solo motherhood, and some of them are more generic around like just solo motherhood in general. So I put a post up on Instagram a few days ago and asked people to send me their questions there, and so I'm going to go through some of the most popular ones now. So question number one is, will you still be fostering? And this is probably the most popular question I have got since I announced my pregnancy. So many people have asked me, am I planning to still foster after having the baby? The truth is, there's not really like a straightforward answer to this one. Can I still foster after having the baby? Yes, I can. If you know my channel, you'll know that I live in a 2-bed flat. So I currently have my spare room for fostering and obviously my bedroom for me. But after having my little one, they'll be with me in my room until about 6 months. That's the recommended age in the UK before they move into their own room. But at which point my spare room will become their room. So I won't then have a spare bedroom to foster in. Now you can still foster in the UK if in your own room for children up to the age of 2, so 0 to 2-year-olds. And to be honest, I mainly foster that age range anyway, so it's not such an issue for me with that. However, it will depend on how I feel at the time, when I feel ready to go back. At the moment, my plan is to take at least 6 months off from the time I have my baby before considering going back to fostering. But it depends on like what's going on in the fostering world. Like so much can change your management, change your policies, etc. There are some changes that were made during COVID and more recently, which have made fostering a bit more difficult in my local authorities. So it kind of depends whether A, some of those have been reversed, which I think some of them might, but B, like how I feel about it, and just a lot of things in there that could change. So currently the plan is, yes, I am planning to go back to fostering, but it's also a bit of a we'll see when the time is right and what's happening at that point. So the second question I got is, what is the total cost of the IUI process from start to finish? This is another question. These are all going to be not easy to answer, I imagine, some of these questions, but the answer to this is, I wanted to know this when I started going through the process, and the answer is there isn't one, because there are different tests that you might need depending on your age and what you're going through, etc, etc. But a rough ballpark to work with is, including the cost of donor sperm and an IUI, not factoring in price rises since then, because obviously I had this done earlier last year and cost of living has gone up since then. It costs roughly between £2,000 and £2,500 per IUI cycle, but I actually ended up having a whole load of tests done before that, so you need to factor in costs for that as well. I will do a video specifically on the breakdown of costs from my treatment, because I did keep a list of this, or a rough list of this, so I will be doing that later on. But yeah, unfortunately there is no real way to break it down, but anyone starting fertility treatment of any kind, particularly IUI, IVF you need quite a bit more, but IUI I would say you want at least £5,000 saved up before you go into it. Question number 3 that I've got is, will you be home/unschooling? It's a little bit early to be able to make an assumption on this because baby's not even here yet, but probably the answer to that is probably not, because I imagine my work will be too much to be able to do that. They will probably end up going to a regular school, although this was one of the things I was concerned about, because I don't particularly like the current education system. And even privately, we don't really have very many sort of alternative education systems, although there is one near me. So if I was financially able to do it, I probably would send them there, but I suspect I won't be able to do that. So they probably will end up going into mainstream school, but that is quite a way down the line for now. Question number 4 is, do you plan on having more than one biological child on your own? This is an interesting question actually, because when I started this whole process, I had to make the decision that I was comfortable with the idea of just having one. Financially, the cost of treatment to get pregnant is quite a lot when you're on your own, and then obviously the cost to raise children is a lot, and childcare costs are horrific. So I had to be comfortable with the idea of just having one, but I think I have always felt that I wanted more than one because I'm an only child and I didn't particularly like it. However, since being pregnant, I genuinely cannot see myself, at this moment in time, I cannot see myself going through this again because it has been so difficult and I don't know how on earth I would manage this with another child. But I wouldn't rule it out at this point because I certainly don't want to have my kids close together. I quite like having bigger age gaps between my children. When I fostered them, I've had kids that I fostered who have had wide age gaps between them and small age gaps, and I personally prefer a larger age gap. I think kids can still be very close even with a big age gap. So that's something that's definitely for thinking of further down the line. But also because I am a foster carer, I'm not totally ruling out the option that I would have one biological child and then maybe have a child that's not biologically mine, either through fostering or adoption or an SGO. That's a slightly different thing. That is a whole other video to talk about. But the option, the thing for me is that just having one biological child doesn't necessarily mean that I'll only have one child. So at this moment in time, the honest answer is I don't know. But I'm not currently planning to have more than one. I'd need to be in a really good position financially and also physically and have a really good support network around me in order to do that. If I was to meet a partner sometime between having my baby now and the future, then maybe I might consider it because we can tag team and make it work. But as of right now, I'm just focusing on one. The next question is, have you faced any judgment from doctors or nurses? This is a really good one, and actually I have to say, no, I haven't. I've been really lucky. I think all my doctors and nurses have been really supportive. Like the fertility clinic, I don't think I really faced much of an issue with it at all. Initially they were like, oh, you're quite young to go through this, but I explained about, you know, my adenomyosis and being on the asexual spectrum, and they were, you know, they didn't ever refuse me treatment or anything, and they were very happy to go ahead with it from that point of view. And since I've been pregnant, I've had no problems dealing with professionals either. So I have to say, no, honestly, I haven't faced any, at this point, at least halfway through my pregnancy, I haven't faced any sort of negative views or discrimination from any doctors or nurses, no. So the next question is around maternity leave. Given how small statutory maternity pay is, do you have a plan to fund maternity leave? I'm actually really pleased to be answering this question because I had a few questions about maternity leave. So first of all, let's just clarify maternity leave in the UK. So in the UK, you are entitled to take up to 9 months of paid maternity leave and then an additional 3 months on top of that unpaid if you want to. So basically you're entitled to 52 weeks of maternity leave in the UK. 9 months of that is paid, the other 3 unpaid. However, paid is all relative because it's a pathetically small amount. Statutory maternity pay is around £600 a month, and who can live off of that, I really do not know. I appreciate some of you watching from the US will still be like, you get 9 months paid, that's pretty good compared to what we get. But let's be honest, pretty much every other developed country in the world has got paid maternity leave now, so you're just really falling far behind on that one. So still, the UK's maternity leave is not great compared to some other places. So in the UK, we have statutory maternity pay and maternity allowance. Maternity allowance is what you claim if you're self-employed like me, and statutory maternity pay is what you're paid if you are employed by a business or a company. Now, statutory maternity payments can be topped up by individual businesses and companies, and many companies do choose to do that. Some of them might have stipulations like if you work for them and they pay, you have to work for them for a certain amount of time to be entitled to these benefits. Or, you know, if you do claim the maternity leave top up, then you have to work for at least another year. Once you have to come back for at least a year, you can't just claim it and then decide to leave the organisation after your 9 months maternity leave is up or something. There's various different things about that, but you can have it topped up that way. Obviously, maternity allowance, you're self-employed, there's no employer to top it up, but I am allowed to top it up with my self-employed income, but I'm not allowed to work, obviously, during my maternity leave because that's why they're paying me. So my current plan, although of course things could change, is to take around 3 to 4 months off after having had my baby. During that time, I am allowed a certain number of what are kind of known as check-in days. Basically what that means is the UK government will allow you to work for a certain number of days during your maternity leave, and I believe the number in the UK for that is 10 days. So during my maternity leave, I can have 10 days where I go into my business and actually do some work. I can't go over that or my maternity allowance will be stopped. So I'm allowed some time to kind of check in on the business but the rest of the time you have to be just focused on your baby, which I'm totally fine with. So my plan is to do that, is to take a 3 to 4 month period off to have time with my baby and only check in on those days. There isn't, however, no limit to how much you can work on those work days, which is a bit weird. So if you do say like just an hour of check-in or 8 hours, it doesn't matter. It still counts as a full day of a work check-in. So I'm thinking I might try and schedule them a bit more so I do like a full day's work. And I'm also planning to pre-schedule some videos to go out when I'm actually in my maternity leave, so my channel won't be completely quiet during that time. But luckily my business has already been developed. I've already developed it to a point where it kind of runs on its own. So there's a number of people who work for that, and I can pull more people in to help too. And then with my YouTube channel, I might get some help with an editor and stuff as well. So another question that came up a couple of times was this, and that is, how are you planning on coping with sleepless nights alone? So first of all, I should just add, as I've mentioned previously in the video, I have been a foster carer and I have fostered newborn babies before, so I am used to sleepless nights and I have done them alone. So that on its own is not totally new to me. The bit that will be tricky for me will be juggling a newborn baby and recovering from birth, however that is, you know, naturally or C-section, whatever. There's recovery involved, and it is full on, you know, babies wake up in the night, etc. But my plans for post-birth is to come back to my parents' house and stay here for a couple of weeks, probably somewhere between 3 and 6 weeks afterwards. So I will have some help from my parents, but during the night I'll be the one getting up the little one, and yeah, I have done it before, so hopefully it won't be too much of a shock to the system. My body will have some memory of doing that. Next question is, have you noticed any differences in reaction when you say you are a solo parent? So I do get some reactions from people when they find out that I'm a solo parent. I haven't had any negative ones, interestingly, yet. I've had a couple of times now where someone has said, oh, I need to speak to you about that because someone I know wants to do this, like my sister or my cousin or my daughter, you know, is thinking about this. They've not got a partner, they're this age, etc., and they still want kids. Would you be happy to talk to them about it? Now, I'm always very happy to talk about this stuff. I don't find that offensive at all, but I have found it interesting just how many people say that. And the other thing is the amount of people that know someone that have done this as well. So they're either asking me if I'd be happy to talk to a family member or a friend who's considering this, or they tell me about somebody they know who's done this. But this type of parenting now, especially like in the UK particularly, I can't speak for other places obviously, but over here it's really not as uncommon as it used to be. It's getting far more common to do this, and it's certainly getting far more common to use a donor, even if you're in a, you know, a heterosexual relationship, or, you know, people who are in same-sex relationship. It's not just a solo parent thing. So yeah, I've had I don't think I've had any negative reactions yet, but generally very positive. But that is one of the interesting reactions I get, is quite often somebody wants my advice or wants me to speak to someone they know about it because they're considering it. So the next question is, what are your biggest worries in regards to solo parenting and your biggest excitements? This is a great question actually, because a lot of comments I get from people online are often around, how are you planning to do it without a partner, etc. Aren't you worried about being on your own doing it? And the truth is, I actually like parenting on my own. Obviously, I've been a foster carer, I've fostered all my children on my own. There are challenges, don't get me wrong. Single parenthood is not easy. I've never done it biologically before, but I have done it with foster children. There are some definite pros and cons to it. But the thing that really annoys me is when people just automatically assume that having a partner makes things easier. Now, my argument to this is that yes, having a partner can be easier, but only if that partner is useful and very involved. So if they're happy to like take over a good chunk of the housework, if they're supporting you emotionally and physically and financially, etc. If you have that, then yeah, having a baby with two of you is much easier than one. But so many people who I've met through the years of fostering and friends that I have who have partners will often say like their other halves just don't do anything. So they're still the ones getting up in the night, they're going off and earning an income, and that's the kind of helpful bit, but they still expect them to clean up around the house and to do the laundry and to cook, and you know, you're cooking for not just yourself and baby, but your other half, and doing the washing for all of you as well, and taking the housework for all of you. It's kind of like having an extra child in some ways. That's what people I've spoken to who have unsupportive partners have talked about. So if you don't have a supportive partner, it certainly isn't easier to have a baby with two of you than it is on your own. On your own, you can make all your own decisions. And you know what, there's no one to get annoyed with. That's the thing I found as well with solo parenting, with fostering, was if I'd been really knackered the night before and there was like a pile of washing up or something on the side, and I just decided not to do it because I was too tired and I'd gone to bed. If I then woke up in the morning, obviously that pile of washing is still going to be there, but there's no one to get mad at for not doing it because the night before, because there's only me. Whereas if I had a partner who'd maybe been at work and I'd obviously been at home all day with the child, they'd come back sometime in between that and, you know, left the washing up on the side, maybe even added a plate to it. Then I think I would go, excuse me, I've been parenting our child all day. Why is there still a stack of washing on the side? Why didn't you just wash that up? You know, you could have helped me out here, and it could have been like a point of antagonism between us. But you don't have that with solo parenting, because you know that if you don't do a job, it doesn't get done. And so there's nobody else to get mad with about that. So those are like some of the small things that I would say can be easier about solo parenting, and also being able to just decide the way you want to parent a child and the sort of, you know, punishments or sort of discipline that you want to use, etc. You're not kind of having to negotiate that with another person. So when people often ask me about like do I think it'll be hard to be a solo parent? Yes, I do, but being parent in general is hard whether you're solo or not. So there are some things that will be easier and some things that will definitely be harder, not being able to trade off with someone and go out, for example. But again, like I said, if you haven't got a supportive partner, sometimes they can be going off out without asking you, and you know, you want them to stay home and they're like, no, I can't look after the baby on my own, what are you talking about? So it's not always easier with two, is the point I'm trying to make here. But if you have a supportive partner, then great, and yes, it probably is. But my biggest excitement is probably just getting to be a mum, I'd have to say. And the final question I'm going to be answering today is, do you plan to try and breastfeed? Yes, I definitely am planning to try breastfeeding. The one thing that I've always found quite annoying with fostering is the constant having to sterilise bottles. So if I can avoid doing that, I would be really, really happy. That being said, however, if I can't breastfeed, I absolutely will not have any hang-ups on that, or at least I'm not planning to. I'll be very happy to formula feed. I've raised many kids on formula and they've been absolutely fine. But yes, I am planning to breastfeed if I possibly can. So I think that's enough questions for today, guys. Thank you so much for sending them in. If you have any more questions, I'll probably do another Q&A at some point. And like I said, there are some specific questions that I will be doing videos on over the next coming months and stuff, because I think there's so many different aspects of solo parenting and solo motherhood that could be addressed in videos, stuff about the fertility, you know, juggling, childcare, etc. There's so much to consider. That I will definitely be doing some individual videos on it. But thank you so much for sending your questions in. Thank you so much for following along with this journey. Do please subscribe, and I will see you very soon. Okay everyone, bye. Thanks for watching.